Ukraine's victory is important for global stability. So I've been going to Ukraine for almost 40 years. The Russians pledged and promised to respect their international borders. They broke the agreement. They were stopped by the Ukraine because of their courage and because of their commitment to their country and because of the fact that they had no desire to be part of Russia.
I think it's very, very much important that Americans and American government really see everything what's happening on the ground.
A people that has courage and love for their country are tougher than they thought they would be.
Ukrainian nation is really fighting for the freedom.
Congressman Steny H represents Maryland's 5th District and is one of the most experienced leaders in the U.S. House, serving for over 42 years. As former House Majority Leader and Democratic Whip, he shaped key legislation on fiscal responsibility, disability rights through the Americans with Disabilities Act, and election reform with the Help America Vote Act. A champion of American workers, he's created and saved nearly 23,000 jobs in Maryland, supporting facilities like NASA Goddard and Patuxent River Naval Air Station. He's fought for environmental protection, including the Chesapeake Bay, and ensured funding for transportation, policing, and community safety. On the global stage, as former chair of the Helsinki Commission, Congressman Hoyer has advocated for human rights and democracy worldwide. He has visited Ukraine since 1987, nearly 40 years, and has been a steadfast supporter of Ukraine against Russian aggression, advocating for U.S. aid and stronger alliances. A graduate of the University of Maryland and Georgetown Law, Congressman Hoyer's commitment to public service started in the Maryland Senate at age 27. Today, he continues fighting for a secure, prosperous America.
Greetings everyone and welcome on Alatra platform. Today we are in Washington DC and Congressman Steny H, thank you so much for inviting us to your office. It's a great honor to meet you.
Thank you. Glad to have you here.
For our global audience, I wanted to mention that Congressman Steny H is one of the most experienced legislators in the United States House of Representatives, and he is the representative of the 5th District of Maryland. And he's a big supporter of Ukraine. You can see his pin, which he's wearing every single day. And he's supporting Ukraine since 2014. And of course, after the full-scale invasion in 2022. Probably, Congressman, allow me to start with the first question. So what really shapes your personal commitment to standing with Ukraine for such a critical period for this country?
Well, hopefully I stand with every nation that is invaded contrary to international law. I was chairman of the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe for a number of years, and in that context visited Ukraine as early as 1987. So I've been going to Ukraine for almost 40 years. As a matter of fact, I hope to go again this summer to an event that they're having in Kiev, and I'd wanted to go before, it just hasn't worked out. But I think that the world, the free world, needs to confront the criminal invasion of Ukraine by Russia so that we do not delude other dictators and despots that they can do the same and benefit from it. Frankly, I think the war in Ukraine now is a result of our failure in the West to confront effectively and forcefully the stealing of Crimea by Russia in 2014. They broke the agreement that they had made with Ukraine. Matter of fact, 3 agreements that they had made. The first being, of course, the agreement by Ukraine to turn over the nuclear weapons material that they had when they were part of the Soviet Union. In return, the Russians pledged and promised to respect their international borders, which were then obviously all of Ukraine, including eastern Ukraine, but also Crimea. And when the Russians put that aside, violated their promise, and invaded and took Crimea illegally, we should have acted. And failing to act, we gave Putin the thought that he could act in eastern Ukraine as well. Now, of course, he thought he was going to have a very quick victory in Kiev. As a result of the Russian invasion, the courage and commitment of the Ukrainian people was tested, and they prevailed. And the Russians had to withdraw. And they came back into eastern Ukraine, of course, and notwithstanding their profession of great power, come up a country that was smaller than they and not as well armed initially as they were stopped by the Ukraine because of their courage and because of their commitment to their country and because of the fact that they had no desire to be part of Russia. It was their courage, as well as my commitment to international law, that led me to be a very strong supporter. As a matter of fact, in 2014, I was critical of the failure of the entire West, not just the United States, but the West, to respond in an effective way. Yes, we put some sanctions on. Yes, we had slaps on the wrist. But it was not enough to convince Putin that if he invaded, as he did some years ago, that he would meet the resistance that he has. And I'm proud of our own country in responding. I'm proud of the Europeans for responding, and very, very proud of the courage and resilience of the Ukrainian people.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for these kind words. And really, Ukrainian nation is really fighting for the freedom. And thank you for all those years, and thank you for coming to Ukraine. I think it's very, very much important that Americans and American government really see everything what's happening on the ground and understand that you're the one who.
Let me just add. I'm a very strong believer. This is not just important for Ukraine. This is important to send a message that we want a world governed by law, governed by treaties, governed by United Nations commitments and premises, and that Ukraine's victory is important for global stability and certainly Western stability. And the fact that other nations believe that at least NATO, the United States, Canada, other free nations like Australia and Japan and South Korea will respond to international law breaking decisively.
I also wanted to mention that actually you were the one who always make sure about bipartisan consensus on the foreign policy. And here is the question, how much is that important right now to make sure bipartisan support for Ukraine continues, and what message does it send to the world when we show the bipartisan support?
Well, first, let's look at, we've had 12 votes. Some more than that, but at least 12 votes, directly on point of supporting Ukraine. In every one of those votes, we've had over 300 of 435 members vote on behalf of Ukraine. So there has been bipartisan and very strong support for Ukraine. Sadly, however, we have not, since 2024, made an additional piece of legislation to articulate that support strongly and to dedicate further weapons and means of defense to the Ukrainians. I think that's a mistake. We now have two major bills pending, one in the Senate and one in the House. The one in the Senate has been supported by 80 senators. What that bill does is pose steep sanctions, appropriate sanctions, on Russia. But it does not mention Ukraine. The bill that Greg Meeks and I think Greg Meeks, the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, have co-sponsored with a number of other members, some 50 other members, speaks specifically and pointedly to our support of Ukraine, our support of NATO, and our willingness and determination and authorization of putting additional resources into Ukraine's defense and hopefully ultimate victory. Let me add for your listeners or viewers, in the Congress you can introduce a bill, and if the committee doesn't report it out to the floor so you can vote on it, there is a procedure we call discharging, taking the bill out of committee. And it takes 218 votes, which is half plus one of the members of the House of Representatives. Right now, we have 217 signatures on a bill to get the Ukraine Support Act to the floor. We only need one more. Every Democrat has signed that. So there are no more Democrats to sign. We have 2 Republicans, so we have 217, but we don't have more. But there are many, many more Republicans who have voted in the past to support Ukraine, who profess strong support for Ukraine and profess a desire to confront Russia and make sure that Russia does not win and take any geography from Ukraine. Unfortunately, we're having trouble getting one more Republican. So I would urge your viewers, if they care about this, if they think this is the right thing, to urge any Republican members of the House of Representatives they know, sign the petition to discharge the Ukraine Support Act. Because if it gets to the floor, talking about bipartisanship, I am convinced we will have a large number of Republican votes and an overwhelming, perhaps unanimous vote of Democrats, which will mean it'll get well over 218 votes, and we'll send it to the Senate. And when we send it to the Senate, it will, I think, jar loose action in the Senate, which has now been pending for over a year. They've had a bill that's supported by 80 senators sanctioning Russia, and that they haven't brought that bill to the floor. My view is they haven't brought it to the floor because the president doesn't want it on the floor, which I think is unfortunate. We're confronting Iran right now, which is a terrorist government. We have not confronted Putin as we ought to confront him, because he is an international lawbreaker, an international terrorist, if you will, killing people on a regular basis in Kiev, civilians, hitting apartment buildings, hotels, other commercial developments, and putting at risk civilians. That's a war crime. And the failure to confront Putin effectively is giving aid and comfort to him and to those who support his efforts.
Congressman Hoyer, what do you think? I would like to maybe also switch to support of Ukraine and in a way of its recovery and development. So what do you think beyond the military assistance also? What kind of areas of the cooperation you see that Ukrainians will need for its recovery?
Well, first of all, by putting a bill on the floor, either in the Senate or the House, that will have a very positive psychological effect on Ukraine to say, we have not abandoned you, we're still for you, and we're going to continue to help you defeat the invading enemy. So that's number one. Number two, they're going to need very substantial economic help. I am for using the resources that Russia had stashed in Europe, if you will, for reconstruction. They've caused the destruction, physical, emotional, and yes, many, many lives. And the money that they've had, which has been sequestered now, has been frozen, we ought to start using that and continue to use it for the reconstruction and rehabilitation and investment in Ukraine. Furthermore, economically, we ought to invest in Ukraine. We've got to stabilize the situation in Ukraine. We've got to get Russia out of Ukraine so that there is a confidence that people can invest there with safety But then we ought to invest in Ukraine. The president has talked about having some joint ventures. Ukraine has a number of very important resources, but we ought to have a bargaining on an even keel. And what I mean by that, not the United States come in and say, we're going to take this from you. No, we ought to have a commercial, fair agreement, and we'll purchase resources from Ukraine. The world purchases a lot of food from Ukraine. One of the food baskets of the world is Ukraine. We need to make sure that is safe and they can ship their products to people with safety. And we have to, my own view would be, I think Ukraine ought to be a member of NATO, and I think they ought to be a member of the EU. That's their real protection. Being part of a defense and economic association that allow them to grow with security.
That's what I was actually about to ask. How do you see the future role of Ukraine in the international community? And what potential do you see it as a contributor to global security, to democracy, and to economical partnerships?
Well, obviously, Ukraine is a democracy. It's not a perfect democracy. The United States, according to the president and some others, is not a perfect democracy. But Ukraine is a democracy. Ukraine is worthy of being a part of NATO and a part of the European Union. And they have shown themselves to be extraordinarily courageous people who love their country. And they would be a great asset to NATO. Ukraine has not been, is not now, a threat to Russia, no matter what Putin might say. That's the excuse he used, that somehow it's right. NATO has never invaded Russia. NATO has been a defensive alliance for its entire existence over 75 years. And Russia's using NATO's presence as a pretense for saying they're at risk and at danger is not credible. And I think that Ukraine's addition to NATO and to the EU would be an extraordinary positive effect, just as adding Sweden and Finland to NATO was a great positive effect. We ought to add Ukraine, and I might add, we ought not to allow Putin to tell us who can be members of NATO or not, or of the EU or not. Frankly, it's none of their business. If they're not a threat to others, I don't think they'll be threatened. And if you ask almost every European leader, they are very fearful that if Putin prevails in Ukraine, that they will not be satisfied, and they will want to, Putin, will want to add other European countries to the Soviet orbit. And I use Soviet advisedly because he wants to reestablish empire.
And you mentioned also before, and everyone can say that really Ukrainian courage and resilience really inspired like millions and billions across the world.
Yeah, it's incredible.
What do you think actually democratic societies and political leaders, what kind of lesson they can learn from Ukraine's experience during this war?
Well, first of all, they have learned that a people that has courage and love for their country are tougher than they thought they would be. Again, I said a few minutes ago that the world expected, and Putin expected, Kiev to be overrun in a matter of days. Probably not hours, but a matter of days, less than a week. And that there would be installed in Kiev a Ukrainian leadership that was subservient to Russia. And the world saw how important it was to have a country that believes in itself respond, because if they did so with the courage they did, outgunned at the beginning, and nevertheless winning and not only reversing, but driving out the invaders for a period of time from the place of invasion north of Kiev. So I think that the lesson we've learned, you cannot take it for granted that the people that are courageous and love their country can be overrun simply because the invader is bigger than they are. We have found on other occasions as well that people defending their country, their way of life, their families, their enterprises are a pretty tough thing to overcome.
That's true. And if you had an opportunity to address actually people of Ukraine directly, what kind of words would you tell to them, including also the Ukrainian prisoners of war, those who are staying in Russia for a long time right now? What kind of words, probably of solidarity, hope you would share?
I would first praise them for their courage. I think everybody is in awe of the courage and resilience of the Ukrainian people. Some have said, of course, don't rely on our continued courage and resilience, because at some point in time, and it's been years now, that they have kept the faith. I think I would thank them for that. And then I would say to them, you have a large percentage of the American people who support you in your defense, support you in your freedom, and support you in your defense of your democracy, and welcome you as a partner in defending international law, democracy, and freedom.
Thank you very much, Congressman Hoyer. It's a big pleasure. Thank you so much for your words, for your support, for standing with the Ukrainian people. Thank you for all your incredible work. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for finding time out of your busy schedule. We know how hard it is, but thank you so much for finding this time and talk to us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much. And I wish the best for Ukraine. And I want to reiterate to your viewers, ask them to please ask one or two or three, we only need one Republican. We've run out of Democrats. We have every Democrat. I say this now in a partisan sense. I say it because we need 218. Because if we bring a bill to the floor, the Support Ukraine Act, it will pass. Because the majority of members are for Ukraine, defending Ukraine, and in opposition to Putin and his Russian army.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Greetings, everyone. Now we're here in Washington, D.C. And here with us, David Plaster is the American veteran and the one who is a big supporter of Ukrainian people. Here's now, it's the 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine, and actually 12 years of the entire war. And David Plaster is actually the one who supported Ukraine since 2014, and I know you start even living in Ukraine since 2012. So we are very pleased to talk to you, and maybe we can start from the question is that what exactly, like, how is that happen that, you know, you started to support Ukraine, right? And what make you to make this like commitment to support Ukrainian people?
Well, I have some Ukrainian ancestry, though I never really grew up with Ukrainian traditions or understanding. It was my great-grandmother that came from a place that's called Stanislava. But while some Ukrainians like to believe that's the reason why I support, I feel it's more because it's the most American thing I could do. Our country will have a 250-year anniversary soon. And over 250 years ago, we made a decision to be an independent free nation. And if it was not for foreign military assistance, foreign military leaders that came over, who mostly gave education, some blood, not as much as we have with the Foreign Legions coming over, but we had foreign fighters, and a lot of treasure, a lot of support. So they invested in our freedom. And I saw a pattern emerge ever since Reagan left the presidency, that every president afterwards had said that Russia is not our enemy. And every time an American president said Russia is not our enemy, Russia did what? It got bigger. And when President Obama said that at the debate with Romney, that Russia is not our enemy, I understood that something was going to happen. So I had a choice to make: finish my military career, or do something about it. So I left in 2012, the military, and I joined. I came to Ukraine to live, and I enjoy football. I used to play soccer when I was younger, and I really loved it. So, and of course, you can't fall in love with Ukrainian people. They're just so welcoming and warm. And I'm from the Midwest. A lot of people call it the flyover state, but we're very much like Ukrainians. We're very warm, good Christian people who believe in doing the right thing. And when you say something, you do it. So I fell in love with that, and I felt kind of very much at home from the moment I got off the plane in Juliana in Kyiv. And today I call Borshchivka my home. I'm very proud to say that. The people are wonderful. It's very green and clean, despite the reputation that people might think about it. But that's fine with me. They can live somewhere else. So when you saw all these things go on, and before even Maidan, I traveled the entire country. I was in Donetsk, I was in Luhansk, I was in Crimea in 12 and 13, and even 14 before the referendum. I couldn't help but support the people. I understood what was going to happen. I've been speaking Russian since I was a teenager. I taught myself, and I would read Svoboda and the microfilms and the Ukraine Weekly, and I would get this information. It was a great great way to hear about what was going on in Ukraine, understand that. And I wanted to kind of connect more with where my ancestors came from and understand that. And I understood that Russia was eventually going to invade Ukraine. It was a matter of time. Russia is very weak. It doesn't want people to know that, but it's very weak, and that's why it acts like it's so strong. And Ukraine is, 10% of the world's black earth, right? So it just makes sense to come out and take it. And Crimea was logical for a warm port. Yes, they had Sevastopol, but, the Russians, they're very greedy. So when you look at all these geopolitical factors, and you also see that experts are saying, it'll never happen, it makes you believe more. There's actually a bit of a kind of a joke about people that are really big experts on things typically get it wrong the worst because they get too tunneled focused on that. And we just lived in this cloud that it was never going to happen. And it was really funny to talk to Ukrainians when I said, what are you going to do when the Russians invade? And they go, what? Like, shusho? Like, what? I don't, that's not going to happen. Like, when I said, that's what I see, and I explained why, and they go, you're not Ukrainian, you don't know anything. So when Maidan happened, exactly as I predicted, and Crimea and Donbass happened exactly as I predicted, because I was going all over the country, and I was seeing the propaganda from one part of the country to another, pitting people against each other. People who on Vyshyvanka Day, maybe some people wear less Vyshyvankas, but if you ask them who you are, proudly in Russian or Ukrainian, they would say, I'm Ukrainian. So it wasn't ever about language. And but once you know that something's going to happen, so you can do something about it, to run away from that, that'd be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. So I've been working 12 years, 2 months, and 24 days now, since November 30th, 2013, for the Ukrainian people, completely as a dobrovolets person. So I went on the first days of the war. As I understand, I'm the first NATO-trained combat medic in Ukraine, because there was no other NATO foreign fighters on that first day, and there was definitely nobody that was trained by NATO to be a combat medic. And I taught thousands of people in those first years and used my own personal money to buy the medical equipment. So, because I believed in it. It helps me sleep better at night knowing that I've done something to help people. And anybody can take a life, right? But some people that want to save lives, and to save lives you need knowledge, you need the right knowledge, and you need the right gear to do so. And it's better to be on the side of fighting for life. So
that's for sure. What in a couple of words you can describe Ukrainians so the American people will understand who they are?
Well, as my ancestors on my dad's side, they came here in the 1730s, right? We, as I touched on earlier, were humbled masses learning to breathe free. We were desiring to live without an empire, right? And I see very much the Ukrainian spirits and the American spirit to be very much the same. We have an expression in Ukrainian that say, "Якщо хата з краю, я ворог перший зустрічаю." If my house is on the edge, I'm the first to meet the enemy. How is that not like the buck stops here? The American sense of accountability, when they see something, they do something. Don't just say something, they do something about it. And I see that same spirit. I mean, like I said, I felt very much at home in Ukraine. It was very much at a neighbor or a stranger's table, very much like I would have in my own house in Missouri. And so yeah, they're very much just like us. You know, the hospitality, the strong sense of pride, the strong sense of justice, but also the generosity. It's just like home, and I think we share that. And if American people watching, if it was not for our foreign allies that helped us 250 years ago, we may not be the great nation we are today. So we owe it to pay that forward to the people who asked us. And in Iraq, there were soldiers. The third biggest contingent in 2005 was Ukrainians. Ukraine's not part of NATO, hopefully in the future, but as of that point especially, they had no obligation to help us. But they did so because they believed in us and what America represents to the world. So much they were willing to fight and die for us, to support us. Ukraine's not asking for us to fight and die. Ukraine is asking just to, hey, give us your old technology that you're not really using, that's collecting dust, in National Guard depots across the country, stockpiles, and modernize your military, because we're going to need you, America, as a preventive medicine to make sure that China, Russia, and Iran, and North Korea, who are all enemies of America, don't decide to do something more and to turn this into a more global war. So we need America to be strong. Ukrainians want America to be strong. But they need help, just like we did, with training, with technology, but we don't need American boots on ground. And they want us to be accountable for that. They want to show how they are good partners to us, how they are accountable partners to us. And they want to help us learn. There's a lot of battlefield lessons learned that Ukraine can pass on to us. And just like the next big war in the world is going to teach us, to include the Ukrainians, more about war. And we owe it to our fallen who have died for our service of our nation, the United States, to learn any way we can from how to save lives and how to, quickly end the lives of bad people who want to harm us, and want to go after our freedom, want to upset the balance of the world and make the world a darker, scarier place. And I don't think that Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China have American interests at heart, but Ukrainians do. They do. So long as we were willing to help them and work with them in their time of need. And I think that Ukraine will be our best European ally when this is all done, if we just have the political will to see it through.
How do you see the role of Ukrainian people in international community, knowing, what already Ukrainians went through, and I mean, of course, the war and everything, but also in terms of maybe global security and just generally like taking all of that experience in the future? What's the role for Ukrainian people, Ukraine as a country in the international community, what they can contribute? How do you see that?
Technologically speaking, so Ukraine took a project that was kind of used by Estonia, for example. It was given to Ukraine as a present. They unboxed it, modified it, made it their own, and now it's called DIA. It's a very great interface for citizens to interface with the government. It's also, I have my own DIA. It's got my digital ID, it's got my tax number, it's got my profile, a scannable QR code so people can easily see me. And I would imagine that Republicans would like the idea of getting digitalized documentation so that at the polls, American citizens can show that they are American citizens with a scannable, very hackable QR code that would allow to verify who they are, right? And also to make our peace officers more safe when they are meeting and engaging with our citizens, to show that ID, and also for our residents, our legal documented people here. So we could learn a lot from that. Ukraine's already doing that, and they might be able to help us modify that. I also see huge opportunities integrating that technology with the Veterans Association affairs. There's a lot of veterans in the United States take their lives, unfortunately. The enemy that we are fighting in the global war on terrorism in Vietnam and Korea is still killing our veterans now. when they don't feel like they get the help they need. So having that as a way to transition from the Department of War to the Department of Veterans Affairs more readily, using that technology, sending the records directly over would save a lot of time, would save a lot of money. And I think that with the great minds we have in our country, as well as working with the Ukrainians, we could make it better for both of our countries and cost a lot less and save a lot more money for the American taxpayers.
Thank you so much for supporting Ukrainian people. Maybe you have something like, I don't know, wording a message to Americans or to Ukrainians. We know you're coming back to Ukraine, right? It's
my home.
It's your home right now, yes. So maybe something important that you think it's important to understand for American community and for Ukrainian community as well.
I'll speak first to the Americans. So my fellow Americans, I did not abandon my country. I did not abandon service. I'm continuing my service to the American people. When I rose my right hand and swore to uphold, defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the American people, I did so because I love my country. I'm willing to help the Ukrainian people for as long as I've been doing this because I know that it makes America safer, it makes America stronger. And I do it out of love, and I do it to demonstrate who we are as American people, and that we keep our promises. To the Ukrainian, часто буває, люди скажуть мені, що недобре такі людей, скажуть, що Yankee go home. А я їм скажу, кожен раз, коли мені є шанс, я йду додому в Борщагівка, тому що я там живу. І мені не стидно так сказати, що я американець, але моє серце українське. Я вважаю, що люди тримаються, розумієте, що не завжди буде холодно, не завжди буде темно, майже весна, і цей американець скоро буде вдома, і тільки разом до перемоги. А я з тобою до кінця, до Чорної площади, коли буде спалити москалей. Дякую.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for supporting Ukrainian people. Thank you to have this Ukrainian heart. And thank you for your service to the United States of America. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
Дякую.